So I've really been thinking a lot about HD versus 4K, to say nothing of 6K, 8K, 12K, even beyond that. I recently had the opportunity to see some of the films that I have created on a grand screen at a B&B theater, which is larger than a normal movie screen. Not as big as IMAX, sort of somewhere in the middle of those two formats. And they looked amazing. And some of these projects were shot in HD, some of them were shot in 4K, but the projection was 2K. And 2K is basically like HD, except just a little bit wider. And this led me really down a long rabbit hole of experimenting and studying and looking at, does 4K really matter? Is HD enough? Is 2K enough? Do we need to be shooting in 4K? Do I need to be delivering in 4K? Because I deliver weddings in 4K, I deliver commercial content in 4K. Does that actually matter? Or should I be delivering in and maybe even shooting in HD? And the interesting thing is most Hollywood movies are actually mastered in 2K. That means that they're edited, all of the effects are in 2K, and they're saved out at 2K for 2K projection in the movie theaters. And sometimes for 4K Blu-ray releases, things like that, they'll upscale that 2K, but it's still a 2K master. And the same thing is true with commercials. Most commercials, if not all, are delivered in HD to the TV stations. They're not delivered in 4K. Some of them certainly are shot in 4K, but it's always downsampled to HD. And if we want to look at YouTube, Mr. Beast, up until the last couple videos he's released everything in HD. So he built his massive, massive subscriber count with only HD videos. And at least 60% of internet traffic comes from smartphones that don't have screens that benefit from 4K content. So HD, at least for delivery, is very, very much still alive in 2025. So, of course, now I'm thinking and wondering, how much does 4K matter at all? Should I be wasting and spending all of those extra gigabytes of hard drive space and all of the extra processing power and taking the time to, shoot things and then have to convert them to proxies and then all of that extra hassle and workflow to be shooting in 4K? Honestly, how much difference does that make, especially in the age of web releases, YouTube? Because very few of us, even though it looks great, very few of us and very few of the projects we work on are actually going to be on large screens. We're not going to be seeing most of our movies on grand screens or even regular movie theater screens. And that's really, really interesting to think about. And so, of course, I started looking at some of my projects that I had rendered out, both 4K and HD versions of the exact same projects shot in 4K. And I was looking at them on my 5K Retina display on my iMac. And I can see a difference in the detail, but it's fairly minor. If I was watching just one without the other, I wouldn't necessarily be able to notice a massive, massive difference. Of course, when you compare the two side by side, you can see that little bit of extra detail that is in the 4K image on the 5K Retina display, but I really didn't see as much of a difference as I expected, and I found that a little bit surprising and shocking, honestly. And of course, like every creative choice, everything that you choose, from the aperture to the type of lens that you use to the camera, 4K versus HD also could be a creative choice. Depending on what you're shooting, maybe you really, really want that extra detail and crispness. And of course, when you shoot in 4K and downscale to HD, it looks just a little bit better. But a lot of cameras also have 4K sensors that internally downsample to HD and look absolutely great. The FX3, the FS5 Mark II, and a bunch of other cameras do this, and that footage looks better than a purely HD sensor without having to have the massive file sizes. Does it look better than 4K footage at 4K? Not necessarily, although I do have some personal taste that I want to discuss in this as well. I'm not somebody who absolutely loves everything being completely crazy tack sharp. I want things to be in focus, I want them to be detailed, but in comparing those different clips, I often found that I found the HD look on people's skin, on people's faces, more pleasing than the 4K because you're not getting, so much of the detail of the pores. I didn't actually love the look of some of like the Sigma art lenses because they were so freaking sharp. I actually preferred things like the Tamrons. I prefer like the look of the Chimera C lenses that I'm shooting on right now, that they're sharp, they're nice and sharp, but they're not overly sharp, overly detailed, and 4K can give you that overly sharp, overly detailed look, especially if you're using really sharp lenses. I mostly shoot people. I'm shooting weddings, I'm shooting commercials, I'm shooting short films where the subjects are people. And, I'd rather have people's skin tones look flattering rather than, being able to see way too much detail up in their pores, all that kind of stuff. I feel like a lot of us, when we started shooting 4K, we got really into stuff like the black pro mist, glimmer glass, all those different filters that kind of took the edge off of our 4K images. But I also feel like shooting in HD, you kind of take that edge off naturally without adding too much of that sort of different look to your footage. Things like nature documentaries or other things where you really want to show a lot of detail, maybe product videos, there might really be a place for 4K shooting and 4K delivery because you want that detail to come through. And I'm not saying that maybe, for your film, you don't want 4K. Maybe you do. Maybe I do. Maybe I'm going to, in a few weeks or a month, going to go back to shooting everything in 4K. I don't know. But right now, I'm really, really interested and intrigued with how good things actually look in HD without looking too overly sharp, overly detailed, almost not real. I hate to use the word organic because everybody in filmmaking uses organic and cinematic and character when they're talking about image. But it does. It looks a little bit, I feel like it looks more like we see with our eye, whereas 4K sometimes can look too hyper detailed for what we normally would see in the real world with our eyes. So personally for me, I feel like I'm leaning towards at least wanting to experiment more with going back into HD, because I was even looking at some of my old work from 2017, 2018, even some stuff earlier than that when I was still shooting a lot in HD before I got the Panasonic GH5 and started getting into the 4K workflow. But even a lot of that, I would shoot and deliver in HD because my B and C cameras were the GH3s that only shoot in HD. And so I was still very much in that HD workflow for a long time, really until I started getting into Blackmagic, the Blackmagic Pocket 4K. But some of those I rendered in, a 4K file and an HD file, and looking at them side by side, both look absolutely fantastic. And if you weren't comparing the two directly with each other, you probably wouldn't notice that difference. If I was going to shoot something that I knew was aimed for a theatrical release, I probably would still shoot in 4K, but I would probably downsample to 2K or HD and give a digital cinema package that was 2K to the theater as long as they had a 2K projector. And a digital cinema package is just the format that movie theaters can use to play digital films. A lot of film festivals will want you to deliver your film in a digital cinema package. And the film that I just saw on the big screen was released in a digital cinema package format to them for the 2K projection on their screen. And again, it looked fantastic. When it comes to YouTube, things are maybe a little bit different because YouTube compresses the hell out of HD content. And depending on what your content is, that may or may not matter. You know, if I'm just doing a talking head video like this where there's not a lot of shots, where I'm not, comparing cameras and lenses and talking about the image quality and all of that stuff, if I'm literally, I don't know, just talking about something random, then HD, absolutely enough. I would, upload it in HD. Nobody needs to see that much detail on my face. I don't think it adds anything to the content, to the video. But if I was doing something where I was comparing, looking at footage, even if I shot it in HD, I would still upscale it and save it out as a 4K file because of YouTube's compression and just how much it crushes down your images. And so pretty much everything now on this channel I try and upload in 4K, even if it's not shot in 4K, although most stuff has been shot in 4K up to this point. But in fact, this talking head video, even though it's uploaded at 4K, I shot it in HD on my Sony FS5 Mark II, which is this camera that you're seeing the forward angle, and the Sony FX3, which you're seeing right now. And so both of these were shot in HD 42210-bit, and they look fantastic because they are 4K sensors downsampling to HD footage, and it looks great. So I'm really, really interested to be experimenting more with both of these cameras in HD because their sensors are really designed to shoot both really excellent 4K and really excellent HD. Not all modern camera sensors are optimized to shoot HD, and that's largely to do with a mix of factors, but a lot of it has to do with the megapixels of the camera. Both the FX3 and the FS5 Mark II have a low megapixel count because they don't need that much to produce a 4K video image. However, a lot of cameras that are hybrid cameras, photo and video, have, 24, 48, a lot of megapixels. The only way that they can really do this when you have a camera that can shoot 6K, 8K, etc. video is a process called pixel binning or a process called line skipping. And these processes really, I'm not going to get into the technical of them, but they soften up your image a lot. The only other option would be to crop in on the sensor and use a smaller portion of that large sensor to shoot your HD footage, but of course that means that your image is cropped in. So for shooting really good HD, you want to find a camera that has a relatively low megapixel sensor, 8, 10, 12, 14, something like that, where it's not going to have to pixel bin, line skip, or you're not going to have to punch way into the image if your camera allows that when shooting in HD. Otherwise, your HD is going to look incredibly soft and not good at all. Unfortunately, two of my cameras, the FX30s, have this problem. I don't know if they line skip or pixel bin, but the HD is much softer than the FX3 or even the 10-year-old sensor on the FS5 Mark II, which really looks great, honestly. So if you're interested in getting into HD shooting, I would honestly look for some older cameras because newer camera manufacturers, they're pushing higher resolutions, higher megapixels, all of that. Whereas you can go with old used cameras on the used market, be that, you know, an FS5 Mark II, for example, or you can even go with the old like GH3s, GH4s that you can pick up for just a few $100 that shoot really, really beautiful HD. Or, you know, something like if you want to get into Canon, you know, the C100, the C100 Mark II, the C300, C300 Mark II, all these cameras that when they came out were, you know, 5,000, 10,000, or even more, like in the case of the C300s. Like, these were expensive top of the line cameras that had 4K sensors, downsample to HD, look absolutely phenomenal, and honestly, for what they do, they're dirt cheap these days. And, you know, on eBay, you can find some really amazing deals, camera packages. You know, I picked up my FS5 Mark II for well under $1,000, and it only had 40 hours of usage time on it. It had pretty much all the accessories, almost no damage. It works absolutely flawlessly. And so there's a lot of really interesting options for HD. Now you might be asking, are you going to sell your FX3, your FX30s, all of that and start shooting HD on everything on, you know, your FS5 and, you know, sell those cameras, pick up another FS5 and just shoot HD on literally everything? And the answer to that is no. I still want to have access to the really high quality 4K, you know, 4K 10-bit 422, the high frame rates, all the things that the FX3 and the FX30s offer, because sometimes clients want those things and need those things. And certainly not until I've really tested out the FS5 Mark II and some of these features, some of the limitations of the camera, the limitations of the sensor. What are the limitations of HD versus 4K, since I'm so used to shooting in 4K, and see if this is just kind of a fad, a phase, something that I'm, you know, really curious about and interested in because of the recent experiences I've had, or if as I continue on in my filmmaking journey, if I find that I actually prefer shooting in HD and the slight less sharpness really doesn't bother me. So let me know what you guys think about HD. Do you think that I am absolutely crazy for being interested in going back to the old days on older cameras, on cameras with less megapixels, shooting regular old HD video when we can shoot 4K, 6K, or 8K on so many different cameras? I would love to know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I will catch you in the next one.